Lizzie's relationship with Kelvin was the kind that made all her friends jealous. It was the dream of every woman. But 2 months after their wedding, Lizzie realized something that chilled her to the bone. She was going to have to choose her marriage or herself, to disappear or live the life she has always wanted. Because Kelvin wasn't going to let her have both. The next few weeks were a masterclass in passive-aggressive warfare. Hello friends, welcome to my channel and thank you for stopping by. Before we continue the story, please like this video and comment where you're watching from. Maybe the US, the UK, South Africa, Japan, or anywhere in the world. We'd really love to know. Leave a comment so I can connect with you, and please remember to subscribe. Your subscription means a lot to us and helps us create more stories like this. Thank you so much for your support. Lizzie stood in the bathroom, staring at the 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, her hands trembling. She should have felt joy, but instead, a cold wave of fear washed over her. Not because she didn't want this baby, she did, desperately, but because somewhere deep in her gut, she knew this moment would change everything, and she was right. Within 2 years, she would be standing in this same bathroom, unrecognizable even to herself, with a choice that would either save her or destroy her. But that morning, none of that had happened yet. "Kelvin!" she called out, her voice cracking with emotion. "Kelvin, come here!" Her husband rushed into the bathroom, his face etched with concern that quickly melted into pure elation when he saw the test in her hand. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around their tiny apartment, laughing and crying at the same time. "We're having a baby," he whispered against her hair. "I'm going to take care of you both, I promise." And Lizzie believed him. Why wouldn't she? They had been married for only 2 months, but their love story had been the kind that made her friends jealous. Kelvin was attentive, romantic, and supportive. He brought her coffee in bed, left love notes on the bathroom mirror, and talked for hours about their future together. He was everything she'd ever wanted. At 28, Lizzie had worked hard to build her career as a marketing coordinator. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. She loved the creative campaigns, the team meetings, the satisfaction of seeing her ideas come to life. Her paycheck wasn't huge, but it gave her independence, something she'd valued ever since watching her own mother struggle after her father left. But pregnancy hit Lizzie like a freight train. The morning sickness started in week 6 and never really stopped. She couldn't keep food down, could barely drag herself to the office, and spent most meetings with her head in a trash can. Her boss was sympathetic at first, but as the weeks turned into months and Lizzie's productivity plummeted, the side glances and hushed conversations began. One evening, about 2 months into the pregnancy, Lizzie came home exhausted after another brutal day. She'd thrown up 3 times at work, missed an important client call, and had been pulled into her manager's office for a check-in that felt more like a warning. Kelvin was waiting for her with dinner, take-out Thai food, her favorite, but the smell hit her as soon as she opened the door, and she barely made it to the bathroom in time. When she emerged, pale and shaking, Kelvin was there with a glass of water and worried eyes. "Baby, this isn't working," he said gently, helping her to the couch. "Look at you. You're exhausted. You're sick all the time. This stress isn't good for you or the baby." "I'm fine," Lizzie insisted weakly, though they both knew it was a lie. "Listen to me," Kelvin said, taking her hands in his. "Why don't you quit your job? Just for now, just until the baby comes and you get your strength back. I make enough to cover our expenses. You shouldn't have to put yourself through this." Lizzie's first instinct was to refuse. She'd never not worked. The idea of being financially dependent on someone, even someone she loved, felt wrong somehow. Dangerous, even though she couldn't explain why. "I don't know, Kelvin. My job will still be there," he interrupted. "Or you'll find another one. But right now, you need to focus on staying healthy, on our baby." He placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "Let me take care of you. That's what husbands do, right? I've got this, I promise." The promise again, and the way he looked at her with such love and certainty made her doubt seem silly. Wasn't this what partnership was about, supporting each other? And he was right. She was barely functioning. Maybe it would be better for everyone if she took a break. "Just until after the baby comes," she said finally. "Then I'll go back to work." "Of course," Kelvin agreed, kissing her forehead. "Whatever you want." So Lizzie typed up her resignation letter, said goodbye to the co-workers who had become friends, and closed the door on her career. Temporarily, she told herself. Just temporarily. The first few weeks at home were actually nice. Without the stress of work, her morning sickness eased up a bit. She had time to read pregnancy books, decorate the nursery, and actually enjoy being pregnant. Kelvin seemed happier too, coming home to a clean apartment and home-cooked meals. "See?" he'd say, pulling her close. "This is perfect. This is how it should be." And Lizzie would smile and agree, pushing down the small voice that whispered, "But is this who I want to be?" The months passed. Her belly grew. The nursery came together, soft yellow walls, a white crib that Kelvin assembled, tiny clothes that made them both tear up. They took birthing classes, argued sweetly over baby names, and made plans for their future. But as her due date approached, Lizzie noticed something shifting. Small things at first. Kelvin would come home tired and complain about work more often. When she'd mention something she needed, maternity clothes, vitamins, a new pillow for her aching back, he'd sigh before agreeing, as if she were asking for something unreasonable. "I'm not made of money, Lizzie," he'd say, trying to make it sound like a joke. But there was an edge to his voice that hadn't been there before. Still, she told herself it was just stress. He was working hard to support them both now. Once the baby came and she went back to work, everything would balance out again. Their daughter arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning in September. 7 pounds, 6 ounces of perfection, named Maya. Lizzie had never felt love like this, so fierce it was almost frightening. She would do anything for this tiny human. Anything, including, she was starting to realize, lose herself completely. The first year of Maya's life was a blur of sleepless nights, endless diapers, and a love so consuming that Lizzie barely noticed she'd stopped being Lizzie. She was now just Maya's mom and Kelvin's wife. The woman who had once led marketing campaigns and pitched clients had been replaced by someone who measured success by whether she'd managed to shower that day. And Kelvin was changing too, but not in the ways she'd hoped. The complaints that had started during pregnancy grew louder and more frequent. Everything Lizzie asked for, diapers, formula, clothes for Maya, occasionally something for herself, was met with a lecture about money and responsibility and how he was carrying the entire financial burden alone. "Do you know how hard I'm working?" he'd say, his voice sharp. "Do you have any idea what it's like being the only one bringing money into this house?" Lizzie would bite her tongue, holding Maya closer, reminding herself that it was temporary. Soon, Maya would be old enough for daycare. Soon, Lizzie would go back to work. Soon, this would all be better. But when Maya turned 1 and Lizzie broached the subject of daycare, Kelvin shut it down immediately. "Daycare? Do you know how expensive that is? And why would we pay someone else to raise our daughter when you're home anyway?" "But I won't be home," Lizzie tried to explain. "I'll be at work. That's the whole point." "We can't afford it," Kelvin said flatly. End of discussion. And just like that, Lizzie's temporary break became permanent. Or so it seemed. She was trapped in a life she'd never chosen, watching herself disappear day by day with no way out. At least, not yet. What Lizzie didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that in 18 months, everything would explode. And the woman she'd become in the ashes of that explosion would be someone she couldn't even imagine yet. Someone stronger. Someone who refused to disappear. But first, she'd have to hit rock bottom. Lizzie barely recognized the woman staring back at her from the bathroom mirror. Her hair, once shiny and styled, hung limp and greasy around her face. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been to a salon. 6 months? 8? When she'd asked Kelvin for money for a haircut, he'd looked at her like she'd requested a diamond necklace. A haircut? Really, Lizzie? Maya needs new shoes, the electricity bill is due, and you want to spend money on a haircut? So she'd learned to trim it herself, badly, and mostly just pulled it back into a ponytail that was becoming permanent. Her clothes were worse, stretched out yoga pants and old t-shirts, some with stains she'd stopped trying to remove. The few nice things she'd owned from her working days didn't fit anymore, and there was certainly no money for new clothes. "Why do you need new clothes?" Kelvin had asked when she'd mentioned it. "You're home all day. Who are you trying to impress?" Maya was 18 months old now, and Lizzie felt like she'd aged 10 years. The toddler was beautiful, smart, energetic, and exhausting. Every day was the same. Wake up with Maya at 6 a.m., change diapers, make breakfast, clean up breakfast, play, make lunch, clean up lunch, attempt nap time, fail at nap time, play more, make dinner, clean up dinner, bath time, bedtime, collapse. And through it all, Kelvin's voice, constant and cutting. "Why isn't the house clean? What do you do all day? Maya's crying again? Can't you control your own child? Dinner isn't ready. I've been working all day, Lizzie. The least you could do is have food ready when I get home." But it was the money conversations that hurt the most. Every time Lizzie needed something, tampons, shampoo, deodorant, she had to ask. I had to justify. had to listen to a lecture about how he was working himself to death to support her, and Maya, how she needed to be more grateful, more considerate, less selfish. Maybe if you weren't spending money on unnecessary things, we wouldn't be so tight, he'd say. Even though Lizzie spent money on nothing but absolute necessities, her personal needs had become luxuries she couldn't afford. She rationed shampoo, wore the same bra until the underwire broke through, used drugstore makeup from before Maya was born until it was so old it probably harbored bacteria. She felt ugly, invisible, worthless. One afternoon, while Maya was actually napping, Lizzie did something she hadn't done in months. She opened her laptop. It had been so long that it needed multiple updates. As it whirred and processed, she almost closed it again. What was the point? But something made her open her old work email, the one she'd kept meaning to delete. There were hundreds of unread messages, mostly spam now. But buried in there were LinkedIn notifications, industry newsletters, job postings, evidence of a world that had kept spinning without her. She clicked on LinkedIn, her hands trembling. Her profile picture showed a different woman, confident, smiling, professionally dressed. That Lizzie had goals, dreams, opinions that mattered. That Lizzie existed outside of being someone's wife and someone's mother. "What happened to you?" she whispered to the screen. That's when Maya woke up screaming, and Lizzie slammed the laptop shut like she'd been caught doing something wrong. But a seed had been planted. A dangerous, hopeful, terrifying seed. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Kelvin came home from work in a foul mood, slamming the door hard enough to make Maya cry. Lizzie was in the kitchen, trying to salvage dinner, chicken that had burned because Maya had needed her right when it was time to take it out of the oven. "What's that smell?" Kelvin demanded, dropping his briefcase. "Dinner got a little burned, but it's still..." "You had one job, Lizzie, one job. Stay home and take care of the house. And you can't even do that, right?" Something in Lizzie snapped. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was seeing that old photo of herself. Maybe it was just that she'd reached her limit. "One job?" she repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. "One job? I'm up at 6 every morning and don't sit down until 10 at night. I cook, clean, do laundry, take care of Maya, manage the house, and I do it all with no help and no appreciation. So don't you dare tell me I have one job." Kelvin's face darkened. "You don't work, Lizzie. You don't contribute financially. The least you can do is keep the house running. But you can't even do that. Look at you, when was the last time you even combed your hair? You've let yourself go completely." The words hit like a physical blow. Tears sprang to Lizzie's eyes, but behind them was something else, something harder. "I look like this because I have nothing," she said, her voice shaking. "Every time I ask for money for myself, you make me feel like I'm being selfish. I'm wearing clothes from 3 years ago that don't fit because I haven't been able to buy anything new. I can't even get a haircut without being made to feel guilty. Here we go with the victim act." Kelvin rolled his eyes. "I work 40, 50 hours a week to support this family. You think I like it? You think I wouldn't love to stay home and play with Maya all day? Play?" Lizzie's voice rose. "You think I'm playing? When's the last time you changed a diaper, made a meal from scratch, cleaned up vomit at 3 in the morning? That's your job." "No." The word came out louder than she intended. Maya started crying harder. "No, Kelvin. This was supposed to be temporary. You said I could go back to work after Maya was born. That was 2 years ago. And I said we can't afford daycare," Kelvin shot back. "So unless you want to abandon your daughter..." "Don't you dare," Lizzie interrupted, her whole body shaking now. "Don't you dare use Maya against me. I love my daughter more than anything, but I also need to be more than just a mother. I need to be myself again." "Then who's going to take care of Maya? Who's going to take care of the house? Who's going to make sure I have a hot meal when I come home from breaking my back to support you?" And there it was. The truth is they'd been dancing around for months. Kelvin didn't have a wife. He had a live-in maid and nanny that he didn't have to pay. "Maya's almost 2, Lizzie said, forcing herself to stay calm. "She can start daycare or preschool. I'll find a job, help with expenses. We'll both be working, both contributing, like partners, like equals." For a moment, Kelvin just stared at her. Then he laughed a cold, bitter sound. "Fine," he said. "You want to work so badly? Go ahead. Apply for jobs. See who will hire you after you've been out of the workforce for 3 years. See how much you can make with your outdated skills. But don't come crying to me when you realize you can't handle it." He grabbed the burned chicken, threw it in the trash, and walked out of the kitchen, leaving Lizzie standing there with Maya screaming in her arms and tears streaming down her face. But behind those tears there was something else: determination. That night, after Maya was finally asleep and Kelvin was ignoring her in front of the TV, Lizzie opened her laptop again. She updated her resume, noting the 3-year gap with trembling hands. She Googled daycare centers and preschools, shocked by the costs but refusing to let that stop her. She searched job postings, applied to anything that seemed even remotely possible. And she made herself a promise. She would get out of this. She would find herself again. She would show her daughter that women didn't have to disappear into motherhood, that they could be both mothers and people with their own dreams and goals. She didn't know how long it would take. She didn't know if anyone would hire her. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was done being invisible. 3 months of rejection letters, unanswered applications, and interviews that went nowhere. "See?" Kelvin would say every time another rejection email came through. "I told you no one would hire you. Maybe now you'll appreciate what you have here." But Lizzie kept trying. She had to. Because the alternative, spending the rest of her life trapped in this house, trapped in this version of herself, was unbearable. Then, on a Wednesday morning that started like any other, her phone rang. "Is this Elizabeth Morrison?" "Yes, speaking." "This is Patricia Chen from Elevate Marketing Solutions. We'd like to offer you the position of Senior Marketing Coordinator." Lizzie had to sit down. The room spun. "I really? You're sure?" Patricia laughed. "Absolutely sure. Your portfolio impressed us, and while the gap in your resume was noted, your references from your previous job were outstanding. Plus, we value working mothers here. Many of our staff have families, and we understand the juggling act. When can you start?" The salary she quoted was more than Lizzie had made at her old job, significantly more. After the call ended, Lizzie sat in stunned silence for a full minute. Then she picked up Maya, spun her around, and laughed until tears streamed down her face. "Mommy got a job," she whispered into her daughter's hair. "Everything's going to be different now." She was right about that, but not in the way she expected. When Lizzie told Kelvin that evening, his reaction surprised her. He actually smiled, a genuine smile she hadn't seen in months. "That's great, babe," he said, pulling her into a hug. "I'm proud of you. See? I knew you could do it." As if he hadn't spent 3 months telling her the opposite. They celebrated with takeout and talked about the logistics. Lizzie had already researched daycare centers and found one with an opening, Little Sprouts Learning Center, with bright rooms and friendly teachers and a cost that made her wince, but that her new salary could cover. "This is going to be good for all of us," Kelvin said that night, and Lizzie desperately wanted to believe him. Her first day at Elevate Marketing Solutions felt like being reborn. The office was modern and bright, with an open floor plan and a coffee bar that served drinks that actually tasted good. Her coworkers welcomed her warmly, and Patricia took her around for introductions personally. "This is Lizzie Morrison, our new Senior Marketing Coordinator. She's going to be leading the Peterson Tech campaign." People shook her hand, smiled, and said they'd heard great things about her work. They called her Lizzie, not Maya's mom or Kelvin's wife, just Lizzie. She had her own desk, her own computer, her own projects. She had meetings where people listened to her ideas. She had a salary being deposited into her own bank account, the first money that had been truly hers in 3 years. That first paycheck felt like freedom in digital form. Lizzie bought herself new work clothes, professional blazers and dresses that fit her current body, not the body she'd had before pregnancy. She got her hair cut and colored properly for the first time in years. She bought good makeup, a new bag, and comfortable work shoes. When she looked in the mirror now, she saw herself again. Not the exhausted, unkempt woman who disappeared into motherhood, but Lizzie, confident, capable, alive. She loved her job. The Peterson Tech campaign was challenging and exciting, and she threw herself into it completely. She stayed late some nights, came in early other days, took work calls during her lunch break. She was good at this. She do not have to ask permission for tampons, to buy groceries without calculating every penny, to see Maya needed new shoes and just buy them without a lecture about financial responsibility. But there was a problem. A big one. Kelvin. At first, he'd been supportive. Proud, even. But as the weeks passed and Lizzie settled into her new role, things shifted. She'd come home excited about a successful presentation, and Kelvin would barely look up from his phone. She'd mention a compliment from her boss, and he'd change the subject. When she got her first paycheck and showed him the amount with pride, his jaw had tightened in a way that made her stomach drop. "That's more than I make," he said slowly. "I know, Isn't that amazing? We'll be so much more comfortable now. It's great, he interrupted, his voice flat. Really great. But his eyes said something else entirely. The house became another battleground. Without Lizzie home all day, things weren't as pristine as they'd been. She tried to keep up doing laundry on weekends, cleaning after Maya went to bed, meal prepping on Sundays. But she was working 45 hours a week, commuting, being a mother. She couldn't do it all. The house is a mess, Kelvin complained one evening, stepping over toys in the living room. I'll clean it up after dinner, Lizzie said, stirring pasta while checking an email on her phone. You're always on that phone now, Kelvin muttered. Always working. You never complained when you were the one working late, Lizzie pointed out. That was different. How? Because I was supporting the family. And I'm not? Lizzie set down her phone, her patience fraying. I'm bringing in more money than you now, Kelvin. I'm supporting the family too. It was the wrong thing to say. She knew it as soon as the words left her mouth. Kelvin's face went dark. So that's how it is? You make more money, so now you're better than me? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. He grabbed his keys off the counter. I'm going out. Kelvin, dinner's almost ready. But he was already gone, the door slamming behind him. Lizzie stood in the kitchen, the pasta boiling over, and felt the foundation of her new life starting to crack. It got worse. Kelvin started making comments about her clothes. That skirt's kind of short for work, isn't it? About her co-workers. You seem to talk about Jake a lot. Who's Jake? About her hours. Working late again? What's so important that you can't be home with your family? The complaints about the house intensified. Why wasn't dinner ready when he got home? Why were there dishes in the sink? Why wasn't Maya's laundry put away? Because I'm working, Lizzie finally exploded one night. I can't work full-time and do everything I did when I was home all day. We need to split the household responsibilities. Split them? Kelvin looked at her like she'd suggested something obscene. You want me to do housework? Yes, that's what equal partners do. We're both working now. We both need to contribute at home. I contribute. I pay half the bills now. Actually, I pay more than half, Lizzie interrupted, pulling out her phone to show him the spreadsheet she'd made. My salary is higher, so I'm covering 60% of our expenses. So you're keeping track now? Kelvin's voice was dangerous. Making spreadsheets to show me up? No, I'm keeping track so we're both clear on what's fair. And what's fair is that we split the chores too. You do half the cooking, half the cleaning, half the childcare? Kelvin laughed bitterly. She's my daughter. I'm not helping with childcare. Then act like it, Lizzie shot back. When's the last time you gave her a bath, made her breakfast, took her to daycare? I go to work. So do I. They stood there, facing each other across the kitchen table, and Lizzie saw it clearly for the first time. Kelvin had never wanted a partner. He'd wanted a subordinate, someone who depended on him, needed him, couldn't leave him, and now that she was financially independent, now that she was thriving, now that she didn't need him, he was terrified. But instead of dealing with that fear, he was lashing out, trying to tear her down, trying to make her small again. And Lizzie realized something that chilled her to the bone. She was going to have to choose, her marriage or herself, because Kelvin wasn't going to let her have both. The next few weeks were a masterclass in passive-aggressive warfare. Kelvin stopped doing anything around the house, not even things he'd occasionally done before. Dishes piled up in the sink. Trash overflowed. He'd step over Maya's toys instead of picking them up, walk past the overflowing laundry basket, and ignore the dust collecting on every surface. I work all day, he'd say with a shrug when Lizzie confronted him. I'm tired. So am I, Lizzie would respond, but it never made a difference. He started suggesting, casually, constantly, that maybe Lizzie should consider freelancing instead, working from home, being more flexible. Think about how much easier it would be, he'd say while Lizzie was frantically packing lunches at 6:30 a.m. You could work in your pajamas, be here when Maya gets home, keep the house nice. I don't want to freelance. I love my job. I'm just saying, if you really cared about this family, don't, Lizzie interrupted, her voice sharp. Don't you dare question whether I care about my family. But he kept pushing. And the house kept getting messier, and the resentment kept building. Lizzie tried to make it work. She really did. She started waking up at 5 a.m. to do housework before getting ready for work. She scheduled grocery delivery during her lunch breaks. She stayed up until midnight doing laundry and meal prep. She was running on 5 hours of sleep and 3 cups of coffee and pure determination. But it still wasn't enough for Kelvin. The house looks like a disaster, he'd comment, sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone while Lizzie cooked dinner after an 11-hour day. Then help me clean it, she'd respond, exhausted. I'm relaxing. I've been at work all day. So have I. It's different. That phrase, it's different, became his mantra. It was different when he worked late, different when he was tired, different when he needed time to himself. The rules that applied to Lizzie didn't apply to him, apparently. The final straw came on a Friday evening, 3 months after Lizzie had started her job. She'd had an incredible day at work. The Peterson Tech campaign had launched, and it was exceeding all expectations. Her boss had pulled her aside to tell her she was being considered for a promotion to marketing manager, a promotion that came with a significant increase in her salary and other benefits, and the opportunity to lead her own team. Lizzie was floating when she picked up Maya from daycare. She couldn't wait to tell Kelvin, to celebrate, to share this moment with him. She found him in the living room, beer in hand, watching TV. The house looked like a tornado had hit it, his work clothes on the floor, dishes on the coffee table, Maya's toys scattered everywhere. "Hey," Lizzie said, trying to keep her voice light. "Guess what? I might be getting promoted." Kelvin didn't look away from the screen. "That's not nice? Kelvin, this is huge. It's a 30% raise, and so you'll be working even more hours then?" He finally looked at her, and there was no warmth in his eyes. "Coming home even later? Neglecting your family even more?" The joy drained out of Lizzie like someone had pulled a plug. "Neglecting? I'm not neglecting anyone." "Look at this house, Lizzie. Look at our daughter. When was the last time you actually spent quality time with Maya instead of parking her in front of the TV so you could work?" It was a low blow, and they both knew it. Lizzie spent every available moment with Maya, mornings, evenings, weekends. She read to her every night, played with her every morning, and took her to the park every Saturday. "That's not fair," Lizzie said quietly. "You know what's not fair?" Kelvin stood up, his voice rising. "Having a wife who's too busy with her career to take care of her home. Having to live in filth because you're too important now to do basic housework. Having a daughter who barely sees her mother. Stop it," Lizzie's voice cracked. "Just stop. I'm killing myself trying to do everything. Work full-time, take care of Maya, keep the house clean, cook meals, do laundry. I'm doing it all, Kelvin. And you? You're doing nothing. You won't help with chores. You won't help with Maya. You just sit there and criticize everything I do. Maybe if you'd stayed home like a normal mother?" Lizzie felt something snap inside her. "You mean like my mother, who had nothing when my dad left? Who had to work 3 jobs to support us because she'd given up her career to stay home? Who told me over and over to never depend on a man for money because men leave? I'm not going anywhere." "No," Lizzie said slowly, clearly, "but I am." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and final. Kelvin's face went white. "What? I can't do this anymore," Lizzie continued, surprised by how calm she sounded, how clear. I've tried so hard to make this work. But you don't want a wife, Kelvin. You want a maid who you don't have to pay. You want someone to take care of you and never ask for anything in return. That's not..." "It is. You were fine when I was stuck at home, dependent on you, needing you. But the moment I got my independence back, the moment I started making more money than you couldn't handle it. You're threatened by my success. You're insecure about the fact that I don't need you anymore. And instead of dealing with that, you're trying to tear me down. I'm trying to keep our family together." "No," Lizzie said softly. "You're trying to keep me small. And I won't do it. I won't go back to being that woman who had to ask permission to buy shampoo. I won't teach my daughter that women should sacrifice everything for men who won't sacrifice anything in return. So what are you saying? You want a divorce?" Kelvin's voice was desperate now. Lizzie looked at him, really looked at him. At the man she'd loved enough to build a life with. The man who had promised to take care of her, and had somehow turned that promise into a cage. "Yes," she said. "I think I do." Maya started crying from her room, probably woken by their raised voices. Lizzie went to comfort her, leaving Kelvin standing alone in the messy living room. That night, after Maya was asleep, Lizzie started looking at apartments. Small ones, affordable ones, places where she and Maya could start over. Places where she wouldn't have to apologize for having a career. Places where she could be both a mother and herself. It hurt. God, it hurt. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Marriage was supposed to be forever. Families were supposed to stay together. But staying was killing her slowly. And she'd rather be a single mother with her dignity intact than a married woman who'd lost herself completely. She'd made her choice. Now, she just had to find the courage to follow through. Lizzie signed the lease on her new apartment on a Tuesday morning, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. It was a modest 1-bedroom in a decent neighborhood with a small playground nearby for Maya and a 40-minute commute to work. The rent was higher than she'd hoped, but with her salary and the promotion that had officially come through the week before, she could manage it. For the first time in 3 years, she was choosing her own life. Moving out was harder than she'd expected, Not the physical act of packing boxes and loading furniture, but the emotional weight of dismantling a family. Kelvin had oscillated between rage and desperate attempts at reconciliation. "You're being selfish," he'd say one moment. "Please don't leave," he'd beg the next. But Lizzie had made her decision. She'd consulted a lawyer, filed for divorce, and made arrangements for co-parenting. Kelvin could see Maya every other weekend and one evening a week. It was fair, reasonable, and more than he'd been actively parenting while they lived together. On moving day, Lizzie's younger sister helped her load boxes into a U-Haul. Maya toddled between rooms, confused by the changes, but excited about her new big girl room that Mommy had promised. "You're doing the right thing," her sister assured her as they carried out the last box. "I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you are." Lizzie hoped she was right. The first week in the new apartment was an adjustment. The space was smaller, quieter, emptier. Lizzie would wake up at night in a panic, thinking she'd forgotten something important, only to realize she was just not used to the silence. But slowly, something shifted. Without Kelvin's constant criticism, Lizzie could breathe. She could leave dishes in the sink overnight without someone making her feel like a failure. She could focus on work without someone questioning her commitment to family. She could wear what she wanted, eat what she wanted, be who she wanted. She was still exhausted. Single parenting while working full-time was no joke, but it was a different kind of exhaustion, an honest one. She wasn't trying to do everything to prove her worth. She was just living her life. And then, 2 weeks after she'd moved out, Kelvin called. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice subdued. "In person." They met at a coffee shop near Lizzie's office during her lunch break. Kelvin looked terrible, unshaven, rumpled, like he hadn't slept in days. "I talked to Marcus," he said, referring to his best friend from college. "About everything. About us." "Okay," Lizzie said carefully. "He told me I'm an idiot." Kelvin laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Actually, he said a lot worse than that. He went through a divorce when he was 10. His dad he was like me. Controlling, insecure, made his mom's life hell until she left." Lizzie didn't say anything, just waited. "Marcus said I'm repeating his father's mistakes, that I'm so threatened by your success that I'm sabotaging our marriage, that I'm going to lose the best thing that ever happened to me because I can't handle the fact that you don't need me." "It's not that I don't need you," Lizzie said quietly. "It's that you wanted me to need you in a way that wasn't healthy. For either of us." "I know." Kelvin's voice cracked. "I know that now. Marcus convinced me to see a therapist. I've had 2 sessions so far." Lizzie's eyebrows rose. "You're in therapy?" "Yeah. And it's hard. Facing all this stuff I've been avoiding. My therapist thinks a lot of it stems from my own childhood. My dad left when I was 6 and my mom struggled so much. I think I internalized this idea that the man has to be the provider, the strong one, the one in control. And when you became successful, when you started earning more than me, you felt like you were failing," Lizzie finished. "Exactly," Kelvin met her eyes. "But the thing is, I wasn't failing. We were succeeding together. You were thriving, bringing in good money, happy with your career. That should have made me proud. Should have made me celebrate you. Instead, I felt threatened and tried to tear you down." "Yes," Lizzie said simply. "You did. I'm so sorry, Lizzie. I'm so sorry. For all of it. For making you feel like you had to ask permission for basic things, for not supporting your career, for refusing to help with housework and childcare like they were beneath me. For being so insecure that I tried to make you small again." Tears were running down his face now. Lizzie felt her own eyes burning, but blinked them back. "I love you," Kelvin continued. "I love Maya. I don't want to lose you both, but I also know that I don't deserve another chance. Not yet, maybe not ever. I have a lot of work to do on myself." "Yes," Lizzie agreed, "you do. But I'm doing it. I'm really trying. I want to be better, not just to win you back, but because Maya deserves a father who respects her mother, who shows her what a healthy relationship looks like, who teaches her that women are equal partners, not subordinates." Lizzie was quiet for a long moment, stirring her coffee, thinking. "I'm glad you're getting help," she said finally. "Really, I am. But Kelvin, I can't come back. Not now. Maybe not ever. I need to see real change, sustained over time, not just promises made in a moment of panic." "I understand," Kelvin said. "I'm not asking you to come back. Not yet. I'm just asking, can we try? Not to fix the marriage, but to fix me. Let me show you I can change. Let me prove that I can be the partner you deserve." "What does that look like?" Lizzie asked. "I keep going to therapy, weekly like my therapist recommended. I take Maya for my custody time and actually parent her, not just park her in front of the TV. pay my child support on time. Every time. I don't make demands or try to control you. I do the work. And if, someday, you're willing to give me another chance, I'll have earned it." Lizzie studied him. He looked sincere, broken even. But she'd seen him promise to change before, in smaller ways, and nothing had stuck. "Actions, not words," she said firmly. "I need to see consistent change over months, Kelvin. Not weeks, months, maybe years. I'll do it," he promised, "however long it takes." They talked for another hour about co-parenting, about boundaries, about what they both needed going forward. It wasn't a reconciliation, but it wasn't the bitter end Lizzie had feared either. When they parted ways, Kelvin hugged her, a real hug, warm and genuine. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not giving up on me completely. I'm not doing this for you," Lizzie said honestly. "I'm doing it for Maya. She deserves a father who's present and healthy. But Kelvin, I meant what I said. Actions, not words." "I know," he said. "I'll show you." The months that followed weren't easy, but they were different. Kelvin kept his promise. He went to therapy every week, sometimes twice a week. When he had Maya, he actually parented, made her meals, gave her baths, took her to the park, read her stories. He paid child support early. He stopped texting Lizzie with complaints or demands and started asking how he could help make co-parenting smoother. Slowly, Lizzie saw a real change. He'd send her articles his therapist had recommended about emotional intelligence and healthy relationships and unlearning toxic masculinity. He'd apologize when he slipped into old patterns, and he did slip, occasionally, but the apologies felt real, backed by genuine effort to do better. At Maya's third birthday party, Kelvin stood in Lizzie's apartment decorated with pink balloons and a homemade cake and watched his daughter blow out her candles. When Lizzie caught his eye, he smiled. Not the charming, shallow smile he used to give her, but something deeper, sadder and wiser and more real. After the party, after Maya was in bed, they talked in the kitchen. "You've done really well," Lizzie said. "With Maya, with yourself. I'm proud of you." "Thank you," Kelvin said. "It's been hard, facing all the ways I hurt you, all the damage I caused. But it's been worth it. Even if you never take me back, it's been worth it." Lizzie poured them both coffee, considering. "I'm not ready to live together again," she said slowly. "But maybe we could try dating again. Real dating, starting from scratch. No assumptions, no expectations. Just two people seeing if they can build something healthy together." Kelvin's face lit up. "Really? On conditions?" Lizzie continued firmly. "You keep going to therapy. You keep being an active, present parent. You respect my career and my independence. And the moment you slip back into old patterns, the moment you try to control me or make me feel small, I'm out. For good." "Done," Kelvin said immediately. "Lizzie, I swear to you." "Actions," Lizzie interrupted gently. "Not words, show me." "I will," he promised. And he did. 6 months later, Lizzie and Kelvin were officially dating again. It was strange and awkward and beautiful, like meeting each other for the first time, but with all the history and hurt laid bare between them. They went to couples therapy together. They had hard conversations about money and power and what partnership really meant. They argued sometimes, but it was different now. Kelvin didn't try to shut her down or make her feel guilty. He listened. He apologized when he was wrong. He celebrated her successes instead of feeling threatened by them. Lizzie got her promotion. Then another one. Within a year, she was director of marketing, leading a team of 12, making nearly double what she'd earned when she first came back to work. And Kelvin was genuinely proud. "Look at you," he'd say, watching her prepare for a big presentation. "You're amazing. I'm so lucky." Maya grew into a bright, confident 4-year-old who loved daycare and had inherited her mother's determination. When she said she wanted to be a boss lady like Mommy when she grew up, Lizzie cried happy tears. On their anniversary, counting from when they'd started dating again, not their original marriage, Kelvin took Lizzie to dinner at an upscale restaurant. After dessert, he pulled out a small box. "Before you panic," he said quickly, "it's not an engagement ring. I know we're not ready for that, but I wanted to give you something." Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant, a phoenix rising from flames. "Because you rose from the ashes," Kelvin said softly. "You refused to stay broken, you refused to disappear, and you inspired me to do the same." Lizzie touched the pendant, tears blurring her vision. "Thank you," she whispered. They moved back in together 8 months later, but this time it was different. This time they both signed the lease. This time they had a written agreement about splitting chores, bills, and parenting responsibilities. This time, Lizzie kept her own bank account, her own money, her own autonomy. This time, she never had to ask permission to exist. 2 years after their separation, they remarried in a small ceremony with just close friends and family. Maya was the flower girl, scattering petals with serious concentration. When they exchanged vows, they weren't the same people who had stood at an altar 6 years earlier. They'd been broken and rebuilt, individually and together. "I promise to always see you as an equal," Kelvin said, his voice strong. "To celebrate your success, not fear it. To carry my share of our life together, to show our daughter what a healthy partnership looks like. I promise never to make myself small for anyone," Lizzie responded, "to keep pursuing my dreams, to raise our daughter to know her worth, and to keep working with you to build something real." They sealed it with a kiss, while Maya cheered. Lizzie still worked at Elevate Marketing Solutions, now as vice president. She'd expanded her team, launched campaigns that won industry awards, mentored young women starting their careers. She made 6 figures and never apologized for it. Kelvin had gone back to school, gotten his degree in counseling, and now worked as a therapist, specifically helping men unlearn toxic patterns in relationships. He'd found his calling in helping others avoid the mistakes he'd made. They split everything 50-50. Bills, chores, parenting, decisions. On weekends, Kelvin cooked breakfast while Lizzie did Maya's hair. On weeknights, they traded off bedtime duties. When one of them had a big work deadline, the other picked up slack at home without complaint or resentment. It wasn't perfect. They still argued sometimes, still had to check themselves when old patterns crept in. But it was real. And it was built on mutual respect, not dependency. One evening, while Kelvin was giving Maya a bath, Lizzie stood in their bedroom looking at herself in the mirror. She wore a tailored suit she'd bought with her own money. Her hair was professionally styled. Her eyes were bright and alive. She looked like herself, not a shadow, not an echo, not a woman who disappeared into someone else's idea of who she should be. Just Lizzie. Successful, flawed, strong, tired, happy, whole. Maya ran into the room, wrapped in a towel, Kelvin following behind with a hairbrush. "Mommy, tell me again about when you got your big job," Maya demanded, climbing onto the bed. It had become her favorite bedtime story, how Mommy had been scared but brave, had kept trying even when things were hard, had never given up on her dreams. "Well," Lizzie began, sitting beside her daughter, "I was at a point where I had to make a really hard choice." As she told the story, edited for a 4-year-old but still true in its essence, Kelvin stood in the doorway, listening. When their eyes met, he mouthed, "Thank you for not giving up on yourself. Thank you for showing me how to be better. Thank you for refusing to disappear." Lizzie smiled and continued her story. Because that's what she was teaching Maya every single day. You don't have to choose between love and ambition. You don't have to make yourself small to make someone else comfortable. You don't have to give up your dreams to be a good mother, partner, or woman. You can be all of it, messy and complicated and imperfect and real. You can have your own money, your own career, your own identity. You can be a partner without losing yourself in partnership, and if someone truly loves you, they'll celebrate that, not fear it. And that's how Mommy became a boss lady, Lizzie finished, kissing Maya's forehead. "I'm going to be a boss lady too," Maya declared confidently. "I know you will, baby," Lizzie said. "I know you will. Because unlike Lizzie, Maya would never have to learn the hard way. She'd grow up watching her mother thrive, watching her parents share responsibilities equally, watching what respect and partnership really looked like. She'd grow up knowing she never had to ask permission to be herself, and that, Lizzie thought as she tucked her daughter in, was worth everything she'd fought for. Every hard conversation, every tear shed, every moment of doubt, all of it led here, to a life where she could be both a mother and herself, where she could love and be loved without losing her identity, where she could teach her daughter that women didn't have to disappear. They could rise, they could refuse, they could reclaim themselves, and they could do it all while wearing a power suit they bought with their own money. For every woman who's ever felt invisible, for every woman who's had to choose between her dreams and her relationships, for every woman learning that true love celebrates your success, never fears it. You are not selfish for wanting more. You are not wrong for refusing to disappear. Your dreams matter. Your career matters. Your independence matters, and you deserve a partner who knows that.